Welcome to Legal Innovation Spotlight, the podcast that brings you the latest advancements in legal tech and knowledge management. I'm Ted Theodoropoulos, and I connect with the industry's brightest minds to provide you with valuable insights and actionable takeaways. So sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Ryan McDonough, how are you this afternoon?
Very good, thank you. How are you, Ted?
I'm doing good. Actually, I guess it's good evening where you are, right?
Indeed, yeah. Despite the very bright background, it's incredibly dark outside still. Proper midst of winter here at the moment.
Gotcha. Well, I have enjoyed your posts on LinkedIn. You know, I talk a lot about AI because legal innovation is really kind of my focus, and obviously AI is a big part of that equation. But and I think we got a really good agenda for today. But before we jump in, let's get you introduced. You are currently the head of software engineering at KPMG Law. You also spent some time in legal as a software team lead at AG. Why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're at today and a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So, prior to sort of working in law, I was working in digital agencies and other small companies. Moved into law because it was a really interesting role that I saw, which was to lead an innovation team, which was a brand new concept that I thought I'd never seen in law, like, trying to make law sexy, which was quite a hard task, but it's quite an easy one now. And yeah, so I saw the role like, oh, this sounds great. And it was really focusing on how do we improve how we deliver to clients and how do we improve how our legal teams work internally. And is that, building software tools? Is that just improving processes? So it felt like a really good move to move into that position. And then I moved to KPMG, again, focusing on global solutions. So we're trying to figure out where do we put the most time into put in our priority solutions, which have the most effect across all of our member firms across the world. So again, a lot of the time at the moment, as you can imagine, is spent on AI and trying to figure out where do we place this most tactfully in the most useful manner without just splashing it around like willy-nilly, I suppose.
Interesting. Yeah, KPMG is a frequent topic of conversation here in the States with their recent approval that somehow made it all the way its way to the Supreme Court of Arizona to set up shop as an alternative business structure. And yeah, I did a presentation at a conference recently. In fact, it was just 3 days ago, and talked a little bit about the state of legal innovation and some of the challenges that law firms face truly innovating. And, I'm a believer that today, most of what we're calling innovation in the legal world, in the law firm world, is really more improvement. And, the difference being improvement is incremental and focusing on efficiency, and innovation is really disruptive and kind of rethinking business models and processes. And not a lot of that has happened in legal. There is some for sure, but it's been a lot of improvement. And I made the case in this presentation that entities like KPMG, which is the smallest of the big four, but still 40 billion in revenue, 4,000 attorneys, 275,000 employees, a global footprint, legions of digital transformation experts and Gen AI engineers and Lean Six Sigma black belts, and physical assets like the Ignition Center in Denver, where you guys bring together clients and consultants from tax, audit, and advisory and solve problems in a space custom designed for that. We don't see a lot of that in law firms. And I did a survey. I asked, after I went through and listed all of those attributes of KPMG, and then highlighted that almost 2/3, 63% of law firms clients either disagree or strongly disagree that their law firm is innovative. And even though there's been almost 2,000% growth in the innovation function in the last 10 years, still almost 2/3 of clients don't feel that their law firms are innovative. And I attribute a lot of that to innovation theater, where law firms do things to look innovative but don't fundamentally commit to change. So yeah, I think this is a big moment right now. And the big four have pushed in the US before with, moderate success, but I think this time is different because the means of legal production are really changing with Gen AI. So I don't know, what's your take on all that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because when you say like the innovation theatre, and it's definitely something that I sort of see a lot of because you always need to be seen to be continually innovating an innovation team, and it's really hard because there's those tensions between what is being truly innovative and really changing how the market works for your law firm, and what is doing the bread and butter stuff that needs to be done every day to keep the firm running. And it's how do you decide what to really invest in when there's no other fallback, And I think that's where KPMG can differ in that sense because, like you say, we've got so many teams who do so many incredible things. It really reminded me of when I worked to a digital agency. They went, Ryan, need more front end or back end? I was like, oh, yeah, I'm pretty good at both. And then when I saw what the front end developers could do, there I was like, yeah, actually, I'm probably more back end. Like those guys are rock stars at what they do. And it's the same. Like when you think of the Ignition Center and the UX experts, and the AI experts, it's like I'm really into AI, but there are some people who are so deep into it. It's incredible, and having that expertise available that you can just go, for this project we need this. They'll cross charge. We get that expertise, and that's available to us in a way that if you're maybe a traditional law firm, like, oh, we need an AI expert. Okay, well, let's put the contract out. See if we can get some other 3 months. Have you got a business case for this? Who's going to keep an AI staff on staff for a full year? No one. But actually, because KPMG can have that person work on client projects and audit projects and consulting projects, they have a reason to be there all the time, and we can dip into that resource. I think that's why it's really powerful to have those people at hand.
Yeah, and you touched on something. So the amount of friction in law firm decision making is stifling to innovation, right? Everything is a committee, and you've got owners of the business, and this is true to a certain extent with the big four. The big four are partnership models as well, but they have much less friction. They operate closer to what you would see in a traditional Fortune 500 company. And I know a little bit about this. Like I've seen it kind of from the outside, but I spent 10 years at Bank of America, and we work closely with the big four. I was in corporate audit, anti-money laundering, consumer risk. So we were engaging with the big four all the time in various capacities. And decision making happens differently there than it does in law firms. And you guys do have those resources that traditional law firms don't. And things are going to change so fast. Innovation is in your culture at KPMG, like true innovation, right? It's not in big law, and I think they have aspirations of wanting innovation to be integral to their culture, but they're not there today. So I think the big four has some advantages going in. Big law has some advantages too, but it's going to be interesting to see how this tension plays out in the marketplace.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like I said, I think a lot of it just comes back to is like having those people available means that they can do so much other work that you just can't do in a law firm. You can't go, oh well, we can get this AI expert to consult with clients and we'll get some billable time off them. It's just not really feasible having 2 people doing that. Whereas we have that capability and we have that interest in building fast and building well. And we have enough resource to be able to do that at scale, which is incredible. I mean, again, there are, projects underway doing like huge AI infrastructure, like globally, which is needed for a firm like KPMG. And to be fair, I think it's needed for most law firms. If you're of a reasonable size, having an AI architecture in place that would allow business teams to be able to consume it through like Power Automate and Power Apps in a safe way that they know is being audited, they know is being have correct guardrails around it. It's really valuable to have that available in a way that means they don't have to spend all the time reinventing the core capability that everyone needs for AI. Like we all need auditing, we all need to log how many tokens are being used for cost effectiveness, and having that as an AI architecture that just anyone can delve into is so impressive at KPMG. I go, I can just use this AI capability. I don't have to spend time doing like that core below the water level iceberg work. I can work on the actual stuff that provides impact. Whereas I find that a lot of law firms, they have to reinvent that piece. They have to go out and find the vendors to offer that piece. And you've got to then, spend time and money and effort doing that. And it's just, again, there's no necessarily ROI on that. Whereas I think KPMG looks and goes, we can see the ROI coming for this and we can absorb this for the next year or 2 years. And so we see that ROI arriving for us.
Yeah. And I think part of the challenge in the US too is and it's not just the US, I think globally in the law firm world, is it's very fragmented. So you have the big four and then you have the AmLaw 200, right? It's like you've got four accounting firms that range from 40 at the low end with KPMG to Deloitte, which is 80 billion. And then you've got the biggest law firm, which is a bit of an outlier, which is Kirkland and Ellis. That's about 7.2, 7.3 billion in revenue. So KPMG is almost 6 times the biggest law firm, and they're the smallest of the big four. So, having those resources is a huge advantage. And I think an even bigger advantage, though, is just the cultural aspects. It really is hard. You have to establish culture at the top of the organization. And at the top of the organization of many law firms are executive committees that it's an older demographic typically. And I've said this a million times. My listeners are probably tired of hearing it, but a lot of those leaders got there by being the best at lawyering, not because they were necessarily the best leader. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the decision making happens differently within the big four. It's not that you were the best tax auditor while you're leading the charge of the tax practice, but I think that's another dimension where Big Four has an advantage.
Yeah, I think that culture point you made is really big. I mean, like every Friday, there's just in our UK community, there's an AI call that happens every Friday where people are sharing what they've seen in AI, and that's across consulting, audit, tax, and legal. We're all chatting about what we've been doing, ideas we've seen, helping people digest. Because I always think it's amazing when I see like just how much AI research and like reports that KPMG are putting out. I'm going, well, who's doing all this? Like, it's crazy how big these teams are, that there's just a team dedicated to writing these reports and having like those people just going around sharing stuff, like going, oh cool, I didn't know that existed, I can have a look at that and take that. And there is like a big enough culture to achieve that. I mean, there's huge networks in KPMG, there's a whole football network, and it's just there's enough people to warrant having that. And again, other law firms, there's maybe not enough groundswell to build out an AI network or a football network. So I think it's having that sheer mass of people also helps innovation, because you've just got so many ideas bouncing around and so many different viewpoints from different cultures. Just really helps spur on more innovation, I find.
Yeah, and you guys have infrastructure as well. Like I was reading about the KPMG Digital Gateway that I think started on the tax side of the business, but is now a gateway for some of your legal applications as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So it started off as a digital gateway for tax. I think we've just got digital gateway at that point. But now we have the digital gateway for law. So which basically it's like a personalized entry point for accessing all the KPMG technology and services. So, if you're consuming hopefully many different services from KPMG, they're all in one place. Again, with different levels of integration and performance that's included into them. But, like we've built out a international business reorganization platform. Sometimes hard to say that quickly. And we can surface information from that inside the digital gateway for law. So it means that, the client can go onto digital gateway, they can see all the latest reports that KPMG have put out, they can see the horizon, scan it and go, oh, actually, how's my project progressing? Click on there, I can see what's progressing there. And then I'm done. I don't have to go off to a different platform. I don't have to do 58 clicks to get there. It's all in one place. So we're really trying to focus it on that sort of like personalized entry point piece. And again, it's a really good place, because again, there's so many developers working on digital gateways. So again, when we're looking at ideas of how can we do this and how can we expand, there's so many people working on Gen AI for digital gateway. It's a really big focus they've got at the moment, allowing the clients and our internal teams to use Gen AI. So we're trying to bring all those capabilities that clients are talking about and asking for, and giving it to them as well.
It's interesting. So we at Infodash started our journey on the intranet side. So we're pretty well established there, been doing the work as consultants for 14 years before we productized 3 years ago. So we got a great install base. We just launched an extranet platform, which sounds similar to your digital gateway. And the benefit of our approach, because we also see scenarios where law firm clients are going to want access. The incumbent in vendor in the space is HiQ. HiQ is a very ring fenced, standalone, hosted solution that operates completely outside of the law firm's technology environment. We think there's a better way, so we have built Infodash Extranet that gets deployed in the law firm's tenant and has access to built-in integrations with all their back-end systems. So finance, analytics, BI, practice management, document management, experience management, CRM, HRIS. So we can pull together. So if you're a law firm client, you can log in to one of your Matter sites and you can see the entire legal team that is billed time to your Matter. You can see their experience, who they clerk for, what bars they're admitted to. You can see details about your engagement letters, any documents related to the matter, any dockets associated with the matter. So we are betting big on law firms wanting to compete with things like Digital Gateway so they can provide access, because today it just doesn't happen. It's really hard to get information in and out of HiQ on purpose, right?
There's a lot of there's definitely a lot of data silos with a lot of legal tech tools. And I think that's just with the intention of it helps retain clients because you simply can't get data in and out of them. And I think that idea of having connections to all the systems in one place, because I think, and I'm not saying like you'll be going full AI for everything, but it's having that going AI would then have the context of the whole issue for the client, like. What does the lawyer know about the client? What do we know from our horizon scanning? What do we know from all the other databases we have? What people have been talking about the client recently? And then that's all accessible at that point. So you have that, that canonical source of truth of the client and all their requirements, rather than, again, like saying, oh, well, some of this is in this system and some of this is in this system, and actually we're going to have to do a huge uplift to integrate them all into like some sort of data lake. It makes sense to go down the approach that you are.
Yeah, we think so. And we think over time, the competitive pressures in the landscape are really going to force both the vendors, the legal tech vendors and law firms to kind of reevaluate the current strategy, which is clients don't really get what they need today. Very few clients even share financial data with their customers through extranets. Like maybe they have the last X number of bills. There's very little work in process. That data has to get massaged, time entry data before it gets released to clients. But clients want transparency, and they don't have it today. So yeah, we're putting our chips on the table, saying, you know what, you've been able to get away with this because you just have big law has been very resilient over the last 50 years, right? But I think times are a changing. I think there's going to be new competitive pressures that are going to cause some different ways of thinking.
And I think that's that. I think there's been that sort of push by sort of what people's expectations are around the applications, and again, like even the billing piece. So again, I remember when my first job was at a law firm many years ago, and a partner turned up and went, turn this into a website. Gave me a form, I need a website, and I didn't see them for 6 months, and they turned back up, and they were like, wow, that's amazing. Like people are just amazed that a website could exist back then. But people are so used to like the applications on the phones and the quality that they have, and again, being able to see the bills. They go, well, I can see my bill for Google Suite and I can see my bill for Uber, so why can't I see my legal bills? And it's that thing of going, well, if I'm requesting a bill off the legal team, that's time out of the legal team's day. Just responding to that particular request. Going, oh, well, where's my bill? Can you forward it on to me? That's not billable time, and it's just it's useless. And it's taking you out of your context switching, especially if it's like a really big client and they're really important. You're going, oh, well, I have to answer that email. I have to stop doing what I'm doing, get this bill from whatever system, and send it off to them. Again, maybe that person goes on holiday and then someone else wants that same request. It's putting the data in front of the client so they can self-serve as much as is possible, because clients, I think, are getting more and more used to that concept now, and I think they prefer it for a lot of issues.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Well, you and I were going to talk a little bit about AI today, and specifically, we were going to talk about benchmarks. And
Mm.
I have conflicting feelings about the benchmarks. I feel like in this rush for the first AI vendor to plant their flag on Planet AGI, that
Mm.
the benchmarks have really focused. That's been a focal point, and we see, oh, it can do all these PhD level tasks, but it still can't summarize my spreadsheet, my pivot table. Just the basics of
Yeah.
blocking and tackling use cases are still very hit or miss. So, like, what is your take on like the limitations of the current benchmarks, for like real world legal applications?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like we say, I mean, we've seen the Val's AI piece recently, and that's a big step improvement on how it is. But I mean, a lot of the academic AI benchmarks just aren't designed for real world legal work. They're testing sort of AI on very isolated tasks like extracting clauses, summarizing documents, and answering simple legal questions that maybe I could even have a go at. But law isn't these disconnected tasks. It's about context and reasoning and linking those different bits of information across all these different documents. And it's, I mean, like, a model might be able to extract a termination clause, but in practice, like, the lawyers want to know, like, how does this interact with liability caps and notice periods and local regulations, and are there similar clauses that contradict it in the same document, and does it actually align with your client's risk profile? And I think that's where the academic benchmarks fall down, because they're not measuring that level of legal reasoning and document complexity and just the real world constraints that we face every day with documents. I mean, even when I was building AI systems very early on, when ChatGPT came out, the API was available, I was like, cool, I'll get this Word document that someone's made for me and I'll analyze that. And it was great because it was a Word document and it was exactly structured how I needed it to be. But actually, that's not really reflective of the real world. It's not handwritten annotations on a document and drawings and literal red lines on the document from versions of it with signatures overlapping words. So it's, as a human, I'd go, well, that probably says director because I can see the word DIR and then OR at the end of it, but part of the signature's gone over it. But AI was like, don't know what that is. Very early on, it was like, I have no idea what that is. So again, firms need to basically have their own benchmarks, I feel, to reflect their own workflows.
And that's how the conversation actually started. There is a legal benchmark out there. There's an associated GitHub repository, and I saw the contributors. I think of which were you one, or maybe you just pointed a link to that GitHub repository.
Point a link, yeah.
Okay, well, talk to us a little bit about like developing custom benchmarks that better reflect legal use cases.
Yeah, sure. So I feel like, when you're trying to sort of move just beyond vendor demos, where they're very highly polished, and I've done this myself, demoing tools internally. I have a very strict script I want to keep to. But when you want to try and build your own framework, you need to sort of base it on the real tasks. So sitting down with the team and figuring out what those are, it's like, testing it on actual legal documents. So not just taking the ones that vendors are supplying you, it's finding the ones that are really reflective and going to the team going, what's been a weird document you've seen recently? Like, I was trying to do analysis back when I was at AG of a document, trying to do machine learning analysis of a document structure. And it was great on all our precedents that we had. But then I got a client document, and the only way they differentiated between the section headers and the clauses was they used purple text. And that was the only differentiation. It wasn't like one dot whatever, it was just a bit of purple text. And you're like, well, how do I train for that? That is crazy. But those are the kind of documents you want to use because you want to see if AI can actually handle the client's insane documents that are being handed over, or just documents that you've got from 15 years ago that are actually materially relevant. And then you have to measure that impact. So, like, is it reducing the time spent on review, or is it just adding another layer of verification on top of it at the moment? And if it is just adding another layer of verification on top of it, again, making a note of that, because again, that may change over time. You may need to revisit these tools and the benchmarks that you have and go, well, actually, this was previously something we had to verify. but now we don't have to verify it. So actually, this is more applicable. And then again, evaluating that accuracy is so important in the real world conditions. It's, scanned PDFs, handwritten notes, multiple jurisdictions, redacted clauses. How is it handling those within its system? And those are the things we really need to evaluate. And then I think as well, comparing the vendor AI to a well-prompted LLM, and checking if the product actually adds value. Because again, these strong benchmarks should really assess like the accuracy, the consistency and the speed and the ability to handle these messy, complex documents beyond just saying, can it get a simple question right? Like asking, who are the parties? What is the duration of the contract? Like we can all do that. ChatGPT can do that incredibly well. How well can it actually handle the real world legal questions?
Yeah. What about like identifying low risk, high value use cases where AI can like immediately benefit legal teams? Like what's a good strategy for that?
Yeah, so I think one of the easiest immediate high value use cases I personally see is trying to automate the non-billable stuff, like the time consuming stuff, and the stuff that when people were watching Suits back in the day, they weren't looking at going, "Oh, I wish I was going to do that task one day. I hope I could be buried in paperwork, or I hope I'm just sat there triaging requests that are coming in." Like, no, they were going, "I want to do the court cases. I want to do all the fun stuff." And so, if even something as simple as like triaging incoming emails can shift that unbillable time into like more productive revenue generating work. So again, like if you're receiving hundreds of clients or emails daily, some urgent, some routine, some completely irrelevant, AI can categorize and prioritize those on urgency, on the client, on the subject matter. And again, like, if you've got a system like you were talking about before, where you have the finance context, you can actually prioritize on, well, how much are we billing this client? How often are we billing this client? And do urgency based on that as well. You can extract the key deadlines and action items from the email threads. And then the intelligent routing, which is what I really love about it, is going, well, who's the right lawyer or who's the right department to be doing this based on the content that's coming in? And again, like summarizing lengthy email chains. Like I was using that recently. I just got off an extra couple of weeks of paternity leave, and I was taking these big email chains and getting AI to summarize, what was the email chain? Am I still needed in this email chain? Drafting an email to confirm if I'm not needed or not. And it was amazing to think about compared to what I was doing a year ago, where I was just working up the chain from the bottom of the email, getting to the second to last email and realizing, oh, I'm not needed anymore, and wasting 15 minutes of my day. And obviously, like, these sort of see like small efficiency gains, but, shaving minutes off every email review compounds over and over, much like your pension does, into hundreds of hours saved each week. And if that can be redirected to billable work and high strategic value tasks, then it's a really good way to be doing it. Because like I've always said in lots of like, AI should be replacing lawyers, but hopefully it should quite quickly eliminate those repetitive administrative tasks. So allowing the legal professionals to work on what actually moves the needle for the clients. The clients are going, "Oh, that's really good email triaging you've done there." Like, no one's saying that, but actually going, "Oh, that was great document you drafted it for me. That was really quick. How did you manage to spend so much time on that?" Well, I wasn't triaging emails all day.
Yeah, good point. I've been beating that drum for a while in terms of leveraging AI as a starting point. Leveraging AI for business of law use cases it is a good risk reward balance, right? Because it allows it's an incremental step forward. It there's still an opportunity cost that you're eliminating in terms of administrative time, and you don't have to worry about client data in most scenarios, and all of the OCGs that I saw a really interesting survey from Legal Value Network. They do a annual um, legal project management survey, and one of the questions was, what percentage of your clients prohibit or discourage the use of Gen AI on the resolution of your matters? And the answer was 42%, either prohibit or discourage the use of AI, which I thought was shockingly high because I've seen other numbers where clients, in fact, I think it was from the Blickstein Groups. They do a law department organization LDO survey every year, and almost 60% of clients said that law firms don't use technology enough to reduce costs. And it's like, all right, you're those are two conflicting messages. If you've got clients who want you to use tech to eliminate the cost, but then are discouraging or prohibiting you from using the tech to reduce the cost, we have a little bit of a tension there, which I don't really know what to make. I don't know. You got any insight on that?
I mean, I'm very much getting flashbacks to when I was at Adult Shores around client concerns around the cloud.
Oh yeah.
The Morphous cloud, it's like, well, I don't want to use the cloud. What about my security? I was like, well, I'm not sure where you think your emails go between you and us, but it's going to be the cloud at some point. So, and again, I think it's positioning. I think it's always positioning the tech in the correct format, because I think there was so much like FUD, like the fear, uncertainty, and doubt around the cloud and around AI, and it's trying to sort of position to the client, going, we're not sitting here and going, the AI is doing this entire job unassisted and no one's looking at it. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to reduce the pain points that we're all facing in law, that currently is taking up our time doing your work, getting us to do the interesting stuff that you actually value here. I was chatting to a friend who works at Adult Shores, and they were talking about projects they've done in the past, and something that's similar that we've looked at, which is around, when you're looking at a huge data room, you can use generative AI to basically take all the documents, look at them, summarize them, check is the title actually correct. Like, is this actually an NDA, or is this actually, an employment contract? And reviewing the content of the document and going, actually, let's probably update this title, like from NDA to employment contract. And like, that's a huge task for someone to be doing. Like, you give that to paralegal, and that's probably like 3 weeks worth of work to get through like 10,000 documents or so. But using AI to do that seems like a really easy, again, low-hanging fruit piece to try and do. It's high impact, low risk. And you can also do document summarization at the same time. So you can go, here's your document, we've fixed the title, we've fixed the categorization of it, here's a summary of the document, cool, off we go. And I think it's all about the framing of AI, because I think AI landed in a way that no other legal tech ever has. Like, document automation was never on the BBC News. There was never an emergency, like, worldwide conference hosted by the Prime Minister of the UK around document automation. People had a lot more visibility into it, and again, it's on their devices so quickly. I mean, Alexa are doing their Alexa Plus in the coming months or so in the US, where generative AI will be in everyone's homes all of a sudden. And I think that just then gives people expectations, but also gives them that issue where they go, well, hold on, what is this actually doing? Because again, it is still a black box for a lot of, in all intents and purposes. I know researchers are really trying to delve into, well, how does it make the decisions that it makes, and why does it anchor onto certain concepts that it does? But it's quite hard to do that still. So it is, in the same way that it's quite hard sometimes for a human to explain what they're doing and how they've approached this particular task. So I think that's the main thing, is how we frame AI and how we frame where we're using AI to really get people comfortable with it. Because, like I say, if we're not using, we've exhausted a lot of the tech that was bringing benefits to people. Like, we have Teams, we have emails, we're not doing postal stuff anymore. So AI is the next big revolutionary. For me, it's huge. It feels the same way that the internet did back when I was a kid. Like, I was really excited when I was a kid. The internet came, I was like, oh my goodness, I can read, I can talk to people, I can do this, I can do that, I can go on forums. And AI sort of had that same sort of excitement for me. Like, this is incredible. It's able to do things that we've not seen before. Talking beyond sort of tech, the vision capabilities, you could basically allow blind people to read newspapers and give them context, even of the stuff which is very visually heavy. I remember I was at my parents' house and there was a wine review. And there was a table with some wines, some prices, some text underneath them. And I took a picture and asked ChatGPT to, structure this in a way that I could then read back out. And it took the sort of inferences, like there was red text, inferred a header, but it wasn't like a structured table. It was really sort of quite an informal way of presenting the data. And that's an amazing, accessibility piece that generative AI has enabled that wasn't available before. So again, I think it's sort of showing those real benefits to people and showing where we can start to use it tactfully in our workflows.
Yeah, there's all sorts of interesting insights that previously would never be discovered. I went to TLTF this year in Miami, and in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton, they had a gingerbread house. You know, it was December. They had a gingerbread house the size of like a Volkswagen Beetle. And my wife was like, "Oh, that's so cool," you know, and they had the list of ingredients that was required to make it. So I was like, you know what'd be interesting? I was like, I wonder how many people that this house could feed. And so I took a picture of the ingredient list and asked ChatGPT, how many cookies could you make with the same number of ingredients? And the answer was like 26,000. Like there were 26,000 cookies. It completely changed my wife's perspective. She's like, she went from that's amazing to that's horrible. What a waste. Like we got people starving in the streets and we have this food here that we're using as decoration. And, you know, uh, I was talking to another guy down in Miami, the same conference, and he was his basement flooded, and he was retile. He had to retile his basement, and he had all these boxes of tiles, and he took a picture and asked ChatGPT how much and you know square footage, and he also took a picture of the floor plan and you know how much surplus or you know short was he with the tie, and it gave him the answer. And it's just like, you know, again, that's those aren't business scenarios, but just by taking a picture you can get and it read, you know, it read the box and the size, the dimensions of the tiles and the number of tiles in the boxes, and he had like 50 boxes. So
Yeah.
it's incredible the things that you can gain insight on that previously would have been out of reach.
Yeah, and I think it's even I think even when you go back to sort of the business world, when I was looking at the Alexa demo recently, and they were saying like the plan is for them to be a bit more proactive going forward. So you could be like, well, have a look at my calendar and see what's coming up, and you know, I've been having conversations. Have I said, oh, let's catch up when I'm in London next? You know, so when am I in London next? Can we check their calendar as well? And do all those kind of things, which I get, you know, takes a lot of work, and you know, it tends to be why people don't end up seeing each other as much. Because like, oh, I forgot to do that extra stuff. I didn't have the time. Well, having that sort of AI system being more proactive in a privacy preserving way, just seems like such a cool thing to have. It could be like, do I need to buy any birthday presents? Like, well, I can see that you're going to be going to such a place soon, the person you know who lives there. So if you buy a present now, you'll be able to take it with you if you go there. But if you're not going there, then maybe you need to post something now. It's like those really nice little features, which again, AI assistant, well, you know, Alexa just wouldn't have had like, 4 years ago. Until LLMs arrived, I think that tech was just so out of reach for them. So I think bringing it in now is such a good thing. And again, it starts to sort of almost like tip the balance maybe in the future as clients are going, well, actually, AI is really actually quite useful for me at home. Like, I'm finding so much utility into it. So actually, maybe I'm not going to be so concerned about the legal firm's use of it.
Yeah. The you know, and right now I feel like there's such an explosion of exploration that's happening with AI in the legal world. I have a friend of mine who he had a I don't know the details of his exit, but I know enough to know he did pretty well. And he started another company that is AI focused, and he's older than me. And I first thing I asked him was like, "What the hell are you doing, man? Go enjoy your money. Why are you doing this again? Why are you putting yourself through this?" But anyway, he created a solution that is AI focused, and it could be used outside of legal. He just happens to have his Rolodex in legal, so he started there. Well, he
Mhm.
said that even when he has executive sponsorship, like the managing partner of the firm who wants to evaluate his platform, he is now getting put into a queue, and a prioritization committee is managing when the firm will take a look because they have so many POCs and pilots in AI right now that they're being overwhelmed. So like, I don't know, do you have any thoughts on how firms balance like the exploration piece with sustainable solutions in the long term?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because I think the whole sort of big shifts I feel like in AI sort of allow legal teams to really prototype ideas quickly, without needing like dev team resource like myself. Like, you need sentiment analysis on case data. Cool, AI will do that in a second. You want to test contract clause extraction and detection. AI can validate if that's going to be useful or not before you need a full automation. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the problem is there's so many AI vendors at the moment. They've all got potentially really good tools that are built again predominantly on a lot of the same foundation models, but it's that issue that we have around benchmarking. It's a lot of firms aren't necessarily in a position to be able to say, well, how do we test this effectively before we invest in this? And like you were saying about your friend there, some vendors who are really focusing on the legal market could quite easily pivot away from legal. And you could selling to live law firms is slow. Procurement takes a long time. There's a lot of risk and regulatory requirements, and if the adoption's slow, then AI startups are probably just going to shift their focus entirely, like finance or compliance or healthcare. And I think maybe sometimes law firms are looking at going, well, because we're slow, the vendors are pivoting, and are they actually going to support our legal workflows going forward? Or will there be an acquisition? Because we saw with Thomson Reuters picking up so many companies very low. Was it Case Text for $650 million or so? And if you think, well, I wasn't. If I was a Case Text customer, like it's now just part of the Thomson Reuters Code Counsel product. It's like, do I want that? I didn't really want that. I just wanted what Case Text were offering. And it's, if that tool gets rolled into a larger platform, you might not want it. Pricing can change. What was previously a nice flexible standalone tool becomes a big enterprise licensing bundle. So, it's really interesting, that piece around like AI solutions appearing. People going, oh, cool, it's really got benefit in legal, but actually a lot of the benefit in legal with the AI stuff is applicable to so many industries. Like a lot of industries, a lot of them are just dealing with documents. In the same way that legal is, we need to get information out of documents. We need to categorize them. We need to get our insights. We need to do reporting. We need to do email summarization. So legal is a really, high value market to aim at. And there's a lot of lawyers who want to make use of this and get more efficiency out of their work. But there's so many other industries who want the same. And if they're willing to adopt quicker, then, legal may find itself stuck without as many tools as it thought it may well have had originally.
Well, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's pivoting away from legal because he's stuck in the mud at all these firms. It's interesting. The pendulum, I feel like, is swinging back in the other direction. It's incredible the number of emails from VCs that I get, wanting to get to know, they see our growth on LinkedIn. I'm assuming, I don't know how else we would hit their radar. I could spend 40 hours a week just meeting with VCs. So I don't meet with any of them. We have one investor, TLTF, and like that's all. It just doesn't make sense. But I have had a few casual conversations, and what I'm hearing now is from also investors who feel maybe a little overexposed with their portfolio on AI. It went so hard so fast, and now they're looking for companies that aren't necessarily Gen AI exclusive and who can demonstrate growth and good product market fit. So now we're seeing again, the pendulum is swinging back a little bit, where you got companies that are pivoting to markets where they can actually get some traction because there's such a glut of tools, point solutions out there. You've got investors who are now looking for firms that AI isn't the central story to their narrative. So, it's going to be interesting. And then combine that with, there are some companies out there with some really big valuations where I don't think their revenue is nearly as stable. Yeah, they have great growth, but how much churn are they going to have? Because I hear stories off the record like, yeah, this isn't actually working that great and it's really expensive. And I don't know. Do you feel like the pendulum is swinging back a smidge or no?
Yeah, it's a funny one because I always think back to when I see all these like huge valuation, compared to what they're earning. I always sort of look at Uber and how Uber integrated itself, and like the taxis were so cheap back in the day. Uber was backed by so much VC money, and then the VC went, well, hold on, where's my return here? And now Ubers are suddenly like seemingly like 10 times the cost where I live, and I'm like, oh, actually, it's not really the great value I once thought it was because VC have gone, I want my money now, kind of thing. And it'd be interesting to see, like, will they be able to struggle will they struggle to sort of maintain that? I think especially if you're looking at tools where they're really targeting sort of prestige markets, there's only so many big law firms around, like to sort of have that and get the amount of seats that you need. Whereas actually the middle market and the sort of smaller firms, there's thousands or millions of those across the world. So like, will they start targeting those instead? And obviously that then increases your sort of how much support you may have to do, and then further eroding how much profit you can make. So yeah, it's interesting to see how these sort of like really big legal AI tools. It's like I'm interested to see how they make their money back based on these valuations.
Yeah, because investors, in the VC world, it's they have to hit home runs, 1 out of 10 times, or the numbers just don't work. And those home runs, I mean, you look at Harvey at a $3 billion valuation, they're really too big to be acquired
Yeah.
at this point, right? So it's a go public or bust scenario from an investor perspective. And is there enough of a TAM, a total addressable market, for that to happen? I'm not pretending to have the answer. And they've got some incredible investors in their cap table. I mean, Google Ventures, OpenAI, A16Z. I'm assuming they've done the math writing these big checks. But from an outsider, man, I'm having a hard time connecting the dots on how is this going to work?
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy when sort of Harvey arrived. I was like, well, surely there can't be that much demand for it, but it seems like there must be for the valuations that they're getting. Because, like you say, and they've got incredibly smart people working there. We've got PhD students, PhD graduates, I guess is what you call it. They have really incredible sort of legal technology people there beyond just like, oh, well, here's a thin wrapper around, ChatGPT, which a lot of the tools were very early on because that's all you need to do. But you really need to differentiate, now. So again, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time. And again, like same with your friend, like, do they need to pivot into other markets going forward? Because again, the issues that legal face are issues that other markets face. And again, can they break into like GCs? Again, only maybe 1 or 2 licenses in every GC, but there are millions of firms around the world who all got a couple of lawyers working there. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely, I don't know how, it's kind of a little bit like if you're selling to law firms, but you're also selling to GCs and making them more self-sufficient, you're taking away from law firm revenues. So I don't know how you straddle that fence, but they seem to be doing well. I wish them the best. I want to see success, especially from which is what is arguably the leader in the space. Certainly, they've got. You don't see. I've been around the space for a long time, almost 20 years in legal tech, and you don't see investors like that in legal tech cap tables, right? Like ever.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. So I want. The investment is good. I want the investment to keep flowing. So I wish them the best. It's just yeah, they know some things I don't.
Yeah, I mean, again, they must have incredibly persuasive talents, which again I think is where maybe a lot of other legal tech has failed in the past because maybe you've had startups who is say maybe a developer and a lawyer, and they're going, we really focus on the tool, but actually, like you say, for a lot of VC, it's not how amazing the tool is initially; it's how well you can market it and how well your contacts are in getting into these big firms and being able to talk to people and convincing them this is where they should be going forward. Especially when you think of how slow law firms work and how slowly they move in terms of adoption of tools, being able to convince them to adopt your tool and adopt it quickly. It's an incredible talent, and I wish I had I wish I had as much of that. Trying to get some internal tool adoption at times.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're about out of time. This has been a great conversation. I know we kind of went off script a little bit with the KPMG stuff, but it's so timely. I'm actually recording a podcast tomorrow with Debbie Foster from Affinity Consulting, and we're going to talk about the Big Four's push. Yeah, I'm not a legal guy. I don't have a JD. I've got an MBA, and I consider myself kind of a legal market analyst. And it, all of these competitive dynamics really interest me. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting next couple of years to see how this plays out.
Yeah, I'm going to have a very busy time building out more tooling to support our US firm, so it's going to be great fun.
Yeah, you got good job security. All right, well, I really appreciate you joining this afternoon, and let's definitely stay in touch.
Yeah, much appreciated. Speak to you soon.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Thanks for listening to Legal Innovation Spotlight. If you found value in this chat, hit the subscribe button to be notified when we release new episodes. We'd also really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate us and leave us a review wherever you're listening right now. Your feedback helps us provide you with top-notch content.